Okay, good day, everybody. This is Emar Sopatute, the Sports Inquirer, and we're joined by Kyle Stevenson from the Georgia State cross country and track and field team. Kyle, thanks for joining us. I know you have the meet coming up next week in the Sun Belt, so we wanted to catch up before all of that gets started. Before we get to that event, how has the season been going so far for the cross country squad as they prepare for the Sun Belt?
Man, it's been phenomenal. And I say that because last year, of course, we all were dealing with the pandemic in some sort of way. And the COVID bug got us pretty good last year. So we had two of our top runners who have now graduated, though. They missed a great deal of the season last year. And the second time that COVID kind of hit our team was around this time. So we were not even able to compete at the Sun Belt Championship last year. So number one, that's what I'm saying, it's been phenomenal. So we haven't had any COVID issues, number one. And every single week, at least 6 out of 7 of our runners on the team have been having big PRs. So meaning that their times have just been dropping week to week to week. So we're in great shape. To have a really good showing next week at the Sun Belt Championships. Of course, we aren't built right now to be like a first, second, or third team, but I do expect us to be somewhere between fourth, fifth, and sixth. Because we have a new team, have a young team at the same time. So I still have 3 young ladies that are going to graduate this year, but then I have 3 new young ladies on the team. So just getting familiar with everything. So as that chemistry kind of comes together, it takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, in your last meet, you were at the UAB Blazer Classic. Marine
Mhm.
Garnier, she finished in the top 25, and you had 5 runners reach personal records or PR times. What
Yes,
about
sir.
that meet? What did you take away from that competition?
Well, so, and I'm not sure if people actually know the difference, but that meet was a 6K. So normally women only run a 5K. Our meet next week is going to be a 5K. And the NCAA regional meet is going to be a 6K. So for all of those young ladies to run an additional 1,000 kilometers and still have a PR was big. Marine is the leader, so Marine replaced a young lady that we had for a couple of years named Lottie. And Marine has just really stepped out of her own shell. She's full of talent. But between last year and this year, she's really just stepped out of her own shell and has become a vocal leader, So it was the second time that Marine had finished in the top 25 of a meet, but that one in particular, you saw some bigger teams, so you saw some bigger Division I institutions. And so that was what was really big for her.
Yeah, and just what about the rest of the runners? You said running that extra kilometers in that event. Uh, was that intentional with your scheduling to get them to that discipline or get them to that distance as you prepare for the Sun Belt meet? Or what did you just take from them having to
Yeah,
run
no,
that extra
it
time?
definitely was intentional. So around, I would say, because everyone in the country is going to have their cross country championships next week, and so you see a lot of 6Ks kind of being offered because that would be the last opportunity that anyone could kind of prepare for the NCAA championship meet. So that's number one. Then number two, most of us, we're using it as training. So it's like, hey, we can get a little bit of over distance done before we taper, over the next 10 days going into the championships. And so the reason that it's so good for the rest of the team, because majority of our young ladies are 800/1500 meter runners. Marine is a 3K steeplechaser who also runs the 5K. So if there's like a pure cross country runner, it would be her versus everyone else is a little bit more specialized in track and field.
Yeah, and I'm looking at your roster. Yes, it's a lot. It's either a senior or a freshman. It's kind of a
Yeah.
interesting dynamic with the setup. But you mentioned track and field as well, and you're the head coach of that unit as well.
Yes, sir.
Uh, Now, last season, well, it's weird talking about the seasons because the pandemic, everything was thrown out of whack. But point is, in the year 2021, the track season was a little bit different, and now you're heading into this cross country year. How have the women held up physically, just through the pandemic schedule of track? Because I know a lot of them do both, and then now with this cross country schedule. Because I've spoken to other coaches, and it's a lot of running just because the schedule last year was so different. It's
Yeah.
had an effect potentially on this year.
Yeah, so I think think coaches and teams really kind of face similar problems. You either had athletes that were very, very motivated with the additional time and freedom that they had last year, or you had athletes that, they kind of didn't know how to navigate the entire process as a whole, like most of us. And so for our young ladies, mentally, more less than physically, mentally, it was a tear on my entire team. Because I remember right before the indoor season started, we still didn't know if we were going to be able to compete. And so what was tearing my young ladies up on the inside every single day, every single week was, what are we training for? Like, are we training? Are we going to compete? Or are we not going to compete? So that level of uncertainty was driving them crazy. But coming back this year where everything is kind of returning back to normal in athletics, it was concrete that we were going to be competing, concrete that here's where we're going. I mean, they were ready, so they were able to, and those seniors that you see, they're also international. So when they went home during the pandemic, they couldn't train because a lot of their facilities and parks and everything were completely shut down. And so that affected their training as well. But then once they came back this fall, they were able to get outside over the summer. They were able to do some training back at home and so forth. So they came in better shape. And even with the rest of the track and field team now, parks remained open here in Atlanta, so everyone could kind of get out when they needed to. And it's been so beneficial versus last year.
Yeah, I was going to say, you mentioned the training. What's a typical kind of week for the team? And I'm very curious because do you do you run through the streets of Atlanta? Do you head to Snow Mountain or Kennesaw Mountain? Kind of
So
what do you train? Do you use altitudes? Do you want to run different trails as well because you want to anticipate what you're going to see in your competitions? How do you prepare the team?
So great question, man. Being in downtown Atlanta is a challenge, so we keep them off of concrete as much as possible. But also down this way, we don't have a lot of hills like you may once you go up like to Kennesaw or out to Stone Mountain. So we usually go to Cochran Shoals. It's fairly flat, like and really ground up fine gravel, or we go to Piedmont Park. So that's where our young ladies will get more of like their distance running done between those two places because they're within a good enough locale of downtown Atlanta. Now they do go for some shorter runs right around the city. That's my daughter right there. So
It's all right.
they do go on some shorter runs like right around downtown Atlanta. But again, we do a good job at kind of keeping them healthy, making sure the type of footwear that they have on prevents shin splints and stress fractures and so forth. But again, when you see the makeup of my team, they're more suited for track and field and not cross country, again, because where we're located geographically, it's just not conducive to having like just this outstanding sort of cross country team.
Do you cross paths with Georgia Tech or Emory or Kennesaw State? Because I've spoken to the Georgia Tech people and they run Piedmont as well. Do you have it? And the Atlanta Track Club is also
Yeah.
one of the premier clubs in the country. And then they have the Peachtree with the road race. So the running community is very strong in Atlanta. Do you cross paths with those other teams or people?
Yeah, we do. And I mean, I know Rich Kenna at Atlanta Track Club very, very well. Kennesaw State, not so much training wise, but we're purposely trying to build a rivalry.
Okay.
So my assistant coach, Sully Douglas, she has been spearheading the cross country team. She is my distance coach. Um, I'm more like a strategist. So I'm the A to Z, like this is how we're gonna do it. But she knows Coach Adam at Kennesaw State, so they know each other. They're good friends. And then the head coach, Kel McDaniel. So he and I behind the scenes, we've thought of just some creative ways to build this rivalry. Like whether it's, hey, if your cross country team is at this meet, we're gonna let it be known and kind of do our own little rivalry. And we're looking at the indoor and outdoor season, like what meets are you going to, and here are the meets we're going to see if we can kind of be at the same places to make track and field and running as a whole, a lot more competitive and fun and interesting to non-track fans as well.
Yeah, and how do you build that camaraderie? Because track, well, cross country, it's an individual sport, but also you're in a team, so you're working together. How do you work that dynamic with the runners and strategizing and training together? Just how do you build that team morale when you're still an individual on your own, putting in the distances?
Yeah, that's a great question. So really simply, how cross country works is based off of the team model comes into you can run 7 runners, but they
Yeah,
only score the first 5.
right.
And then of course you want those 5 to run in a close pack, because cross country it's about who has the lowest score. And track and field it's about who can score the most. So in cross country, that's what you do. You try to recruit young ladies that are kind of like similar in times or talent, so they can kind of run in packs, and you want to coach them to run that way because you want to have that. So of course, every team is going to have their front runner. So Marine, it's us. So Marine, she's going to be in our top 10. Well, if we know those next young ladies are going to be between 15 and 30, we want them to be as close to each other as possible, closer to that 15 end versus that number 30 end. That's how that works. Now in track and field, it is definitely more difficult because now you have different training groups practicing at different times. Sometimes they don't see each other for like 3 days, so they don't know who's doing what. And so what we try to do here at Georgia State is at least twice a week, the entire team practices at the same time together. And so our days this year are Wednesdays, Fridays, and actually Saturdays. Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, they get to see each other all at the same time. And that helps build camaraderie. I mean, every team kind of has their sayings and stuff like that. Our saying this year is FLY, and it stands for forget last year. At least that's the PG version. So,
I got you.
so you do those kind of things every other week. We do an occasional meal for the team. One of our favorites is Playa Bowl right off the belt line. So we'll have that after Friday practice. Of course, team events, we're going to Six Flags this Friday for Fright Night. So you just had to do those sort of things. But I think it comes from the leadership when you're trying to build that glue and really have them come together. So my ladies do reflect a lot of my personality and my attitude, so I'm a pretty blue collar type of guy, no pun intended, because I have on this blue sweatshirt, but I'm born and raised in Memphis, and it's just in me. I've always was an undersized guy, so I always had to work really, really hard. Excuse me. So my young ladies understand that as well. We're tucked between Georgia State and UGA, and just being in the state of Georgia, it's a huge running community, like you said, but a lot of talent is here and a lot of talent gets pulled away from here. So where UGA may pull the top 5 athlete in the state of Georgia, we may get the top 15 or top 25. So I try to give them that chip to run with on their shoulder of like kind of being overlooked, or, just putting that in their ear for a little bit of motivation.
Does that help with your experiences in your career, starting off as a walk-on at Tennessee, becoming an All-America? Is that where you try to instill in them as well? Just someone who started off from maybe not a bottom, but maybe one place and elevated himself to one of the best runners in the country?
I 100%, and I let them know that it does not matter if you are a full track scholarship athlete, a partial, or none at all. And the example that I use all the time in college, I say everybody's a state champion. I said, so everybody in college has won a state championship or has been to the state meet. I said, but the difference is in college between you and the next person is the attention to detail. I said, so anyone that can be the most detailed and can run the cleanest and technically sound, they're going to be the ones that are going to rise to the top at the collegiate level. And that's what it was for me. So I just 5'5", 5'6" on a good day, I maximized every ounce of my body by being clean and being very detailed to beat the people next to me.
Sure. And now you have the Sun Belt meet taking place on the 29th. So you've had a few weeks. You have this week and then even into next week to prepare for it. How are the preparations going for the team, and how are you tapering them or trying to get them ready to be at peak condition for the competition?
Yeah, so number one, like I said, you have to start with the UAB meet. So although it was a competition, we used it for training because it was an additional 1K. And right off of that, we've had like an easy run. And so we've kind of been resting them all week because our last tough workout is going to be this Saturday. So that's where we will hit our mile repeats, and then next week, it's going to be sort of the same thing. We're just going to get the legs turning over. So we are fortunate enough. We have 2 separate facilities where you have nice turf where they can run on barefoot. So that's where we'll be able to get in like some 100-meter strides, nice and easy as we go into it. Of course, we have a masseuse that comes every week, so that's beneficial as well. That helps kind of keep them fresh and relaxed. And I mean, we compete on Friday, and we're going to leave Wednesday, so we're going to give them plenty of time, to get down there, be rested, be ready to go. Because at this point, there's no more of getting in shape that we need to do. They just need to be rested. They need to be healthy. They need to be hydrated at this point.
Actually, brought up the facilities. I'm assuming the 2 facilities is a GSU Stadium, the football stadium, and also I guess we call it new, but where the soccer team plays now at MLK. Are those 2 facilities you're talking about, and how beneficial are
Yes.
those they're right close to you with the weight rooms and I guess all those facilities for you to use for your training?
Yeah, so they are helpful for us because we don't have our own home track facility. But being a runner, and most people in the running community know, all we need is just some space to run if we can make it work. So it's very beneficial. Our locker room is also at the Georgia State soccer facility. So it's a lot easier to go from this place. We have a training room. We have a training room in every single Georgia athletics facility. So it's easy to just, okay, I can take my shower here, or I can run right here. I can get my treatment right here. And hopefully by January, a new weight room will be done at GSU Soccer as well. So that's going to be a one-stop location for us. And then the only place we'll really have to commute for, of course, for our longer runs or our mile repeat runs will be Cochran Shoals or Piedmont Park. And then we use Lakewood Stadium during track season.
Good. All right. Well, Kyle, thank you for your time. We greatly appreciate it. And we'll catch up after the meet.
All right. Thank you so much.